Hi, guys, and welcome to the Spotlight Masterclass. And today we'll be discussing how many investment properties do you really need? So, who best to explain that is Amanda. But first of all, we go through housekeeping. Amanda.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the next in our Spotlight Masterclass series. Very, very quickly, we don't replace your broker or accountant. They form part of your team just as we do. The advice in this presentation is general in nature. We have not taken down, obviously, your personal circumstances or done an assessment of your finances. So please take today's presentation as general knowledge. If you do have specific questions to ask that do pertain to your specific circumstances, then of course, Dragan will be available to you for that.
Definitely.
So this particular topic is one that comes up a lot because when people forward plan or future plan their portfolios, they wonder, well, what's my end game? What am I actually trying to achieve here? So this pair of topics, as you know, all the topics come in pairs. We focus on that, how to answer that and how to arrive at that number and then how to achieve that number. So today, how many investment properties do you really need? We hear a lot of people talk about, 60, 70, 150. It's all about volume and quantity with a lot of people. In this case, not necessarily. So what we're going to do is break down the real numbers and what works for you. Obviously, you'll then adapt that to your own circumstances or pop into a call with Dragan to see how that fits you. Today is general. And then, of course, the partner class, how do you get from 1 to 5 properties? So assuming that you decide, 5 is your number, we'll actually walk you through step by step how to get from today 0 properties to 5 properties in total. So these two go really nicely together because they help you plan your portfolio and plan your endpoint. Because once you know your endpoint, you then reverse engineer your strategy.
That's right. And guys, again, please book a 15-minute discovery call with myself. Any questions you have, you've got 15 minutes to ask them. So here's the QR code here, or go to propertysessions.com.au/15 and let's have a discussion on your strategy.
Yeah, and this is probably the topic where it's most relevant because what we're sort of doing today is, mm, I suppose, building a strategy based on what we see most commonly in our clients. But of course, you may not fit the mold that we sort of use as the example today. So write down what clicks for you and what doesn't so that you can pop into a call with Dragan and apply it to yourself, what you learned today.
Now, a little bit about us, and I'll start. So myself, my background, former, sorry, parents from former Yugoslavia migrated to Australia in the 70s. The only child, grew up in commission housing in an area called Redfern in Sydney, which some of you, I'm sure, know the past of that area. So anyway, so I was one of those kids where in my school playground, or I should say school friends, had the nice shoes and the clothing where, I sort of did not. So, parents were sort of struggling to make ends meet, and it sort of brought a little bit of fire into me, a spark to sort of achieve when I got into my older age. And this is, I guess, why it sort of led me to run my own business and start investing in property for myself, but not only that, it's also for my kids not to struggle when they're growing up. So obviously, teach my kids to go to the right path of investing and showing my kids what to do and not to do when it comes to property investing, educate them young so it's already molded into their head as they, progress in the future as adults. But not only that, also teach clients, what to do and not to do as I would with my kids. Of course, I'm not good at this. Talking about myself. Sorry, guys. Anyway, you could find better ones in the other spotlight classes.
Yeah, we do these same 2 slides in every class, and we both always struggle to come up with something new. So it's good that I make Dragan go first
Yeah.
because then I can use whatever he says as a launch pad for my one because my upbringing was different here. So I always try to find a point of contrast. But today I'm actually going to go for a point of similarity.
Okay.
So if you've watched all of these, you'll know that I'm the next generation down. So I've benefited from the knowledge of my parents and all of that. And Dragan always talks about how he was the kid that didn't have amongst all the kids that did have. My parents, they didn't indulge us kids. So they still, they were humble and they wanted us to be humble. So we still had the Kmart shoes and all the stuff that he begrudged, and all the kids around us had the nice stuff and we didn't, because my parents, they weren't frugal, but they didn't throw money away, and they just didn't see value in buying label brands for kids that were going to destroy them anyway. So we got the Kmart stuff. So my kids wear the Kmart stuff. I mean, you can see my son there. He's a little devil child. He goes for a pair of shoes every month. I'm not buying expensive ones for him. So we do the same. And I always remembered my dad, because we would complain, Dad, why don't you buy us a nice stuff? Like mum would sometimes, mum would indulge us a little bit, but dad was very tight. And dad was like, what for? That was his answer to everything. He was such a wog dad. He's Italian. Like, what for? And I remember when I was 17 and I got my P's, he said to me, all right, if you get your P's first go, I will buy you a car. Idiot me went, oh, you beauty. Back then it was, I don't know if you remember the frog green Mazda 2s. They were everywhere.
Yeah.
I really wanted a frog green Mazda 2. And I was like on the Mazda website. I picked it. I'm like, I'm going to get this, Dad. I'm going to get my P's first go. And Dad's like, yeah, pumping me up. Got my P's first go. I'm like, right, Dad, let's go to Mazda. Dad's like, I never promised you a new car. I'm like, here we go. We're backpedaling. All right, a secondhand Mazda 2. No, not even that. You know what he did to me? And I still hold it against him. I grew up on acreage, so we had paddock bashes.
Mm-hmm.
He took me out into the backyard, which looked like a car yard. He said, pick one, I'll register it.
There you go. So your dad, what did he used to do?
He was a Sparky.
So my dad used to actually panel beat cars.
Oh, yeah. So
So-
you had a car yard.
So I sort of had a car yard in the backyard, and my dad, it's a funny story. So when I never chose, the only cars I chose was the ones with the back.
Yeah,
They
same.
said, do you want that one? Okay, I'll fix that one and I'll register it, and that's your car. The problem was he used to sell the cars
Yeah.
within a few months. So as soon as I got comfortable with
Yeah.
with a particular car, he goes, oh, we're selling this one. That one's yours now.
Yeah.
But being a panel beater as he was for several years, on occasion you would find flaws in the car. And I kid you not, I had one time back in the day, I was probably 19 years old, and I'm driving my car on, was it Epping Road. And I remember there was a big clonk clonk on the car, and I look to my right, I go, this is wrong, and I see this wheel just going forward, and I'm going, and the car's wobbling, and I go, I better stop. The wheel came off the car, and I call my dad. I go, Dad, the wheel came off the car. He goes, is anyone hurt? Did it hit anything? I go, no, but I'm stuck on the middle of a road with a car, so down the road somewhere.
Funny.
Anyway,
My dad called it character building. So my first car's a 1987 Ford Laser. And so everyone else in the schoolyard, it was either the brand new Mazda 2 Frog Green or the new Beetle had come out at the same time. Everyone had a Beetle or a Mazda 2. And I'm then losing my voice. My 1987 Ford Laser, got all the smoke coming out the back. I used to have to carry bars leak with me. Because the radiator had a hole in it.
yeah.
So I'd have to limp. I would drive from Kenthurst to Parramatta. I went to school in Parramatta. The 40-minute drive back then. It's a lot longer now. And I'd have to limp it there, and every 10 Ks pull over, top it up.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Keep my bottle of Cotti's cordial water, top up my water. Oh, it was bad. And then when that car died, they only ever lasted 6 months. And then when that one died, I'd get the next one. And then one had aircon. And I was like, oh my God, how did you ship the aircon? I bags that one. And yeah, it was character building, definitely. And then that's how I learned to drive manual. He registered a manual one. He's like, off you go. Because I was on my green peas by then. And so when you talk about having and not having, I kind of suffered the same fate, but my parents chose to put me through that. And I don't know if that's better or worse.
I don't know. I think it is better. You're not expecting things in life.
No, but they made a lot of false promises.
Oh, that's a difference.
If you get your P's first go, yeah, I'll get you a car.
Or they said they'll get you a car, and they got you a car.
I just got ahead of myself and picked out the...
It's funny because those stories that your dad tells you, it just brings back to what I'm telling my kids.
I know, and I'm turning into... I do it to my 6-year-old. You can see my daughter there, and she's a top negotiator. My daughter is like... She doesn't miss a beat, right? So I've got to be careful what promises I make to her, because she'll pull me up and she's like, no, Mummy, that's not what you said. And I'm
Next time I see you again, make sure you put it on paper.
100%. I know she knows now, or she'll ring my mum. She's like, I'm ringing Nonna. I'll just get it from Nonna if you won't give it to me. They're clever, these kids.
All right.
All right.
Quality was quantity.
We always dive into story time, don't we?
We do.
It's good fun.
It's fun, of course. It gets people out there to know us a little bit better.
Yeah. And what brought us here, right? Because like Dad called it character building. And yeah, like when you don't have things just handed to you, it does give you the hunger.
Yeah.
Whereas my kids, I don't know if they're going to have the hunger because when my parents said no to me, my parents say yes to them. My kids ask for something, my parents hand it over.
Yeah.
You know?
Grandparents typical, right?
Yeah.
Well, they don't have to deal with it.
No, that's right. I'm like, Mum and Dad, where were the yeses when I was younger?
Yeah.
It's not fair. All right.
This is one of my favorites because I know there's a lot of spookers out there that market themselves. I'm sure you're going to get to that. I've got 60 properties. Yeah. What kind of 60 properties do you have?
This annoys me. I think we're going to come into this with different beef. Because my beef with it is that if you say to someone as a spooker, oh, I've got 100 properties or whatever, like that sounds impressive to somebody that's at the start line. But what language are we allowed to use? Do we have to have like a PG-13?
Let's do a PG-13 at least.
I think you sound like a bit of a dick because it's like saying to, okay, like I've always struggled, for example, with like, I'm not athletic. I read books, okay? You saw on the previous slide, I was an English teacher. If you said to me, Amanda, go run a marathon, I would look at you and be like, run a marathon, bro. I can't even run a minute without dying of emphysema. Like, it's not going to happen, right? So the equivalent to me would be as if somebody said to me, all right, Amanda, if you go 42K on your bike, run. And I'm thinking, that's not achievable for me. Like for me, an achievement for me is if I could run a kilometer without praying for death at the end of it, right? So the equivalent here with these property spookers that go, I own 100 properties, it's a bit tone deaf because it's not a level playing field for everyone and not everyone has the same strengths, right? So if you're going to guide somebody on a journey, you have to meet them where they're at, not try to make it about yourself and where you're at. Like it doesn't matter where the mentor is.
But not only that, I personally know a handful of them that I've met many years ago and they were in an education process, not knowing anything. And suddenly they're marketing themselves on social media 2 years later that they've got 20 plus properties. And I'm obviously not going to say names, but they're out there as well. And you got to be careful.
And I think as well, and I'm speaking now about my husband here, and I hope he doesn't mind. If you're watching, I am going to use you as an example, Stephen. So sorry, but you're a good example. My husband he's a very driven and very ambitious man. And sometimes he can get a bit over ambitious. And he's the sort of person where when he sets a goal, he does achieve it. He's one of those personality types, right? Like there's the tunnel vision and like you get in his way, like he'll just bulldoze you out of the way and he'll get to that goal, right? So he was very susceptible to this type of marketing. And I've got the first one there, 30 by 30 Club. So when I first met him, he very much wanted to be one of those guys that's like, 30 properties by the age of 30. And I met him, he was 24, 23, 24. So he was like well on his way and he probably would have got there. But I'm saying to him, Stephen, can I swear again? You're buying shit, right? Like you're buying entry level, basic, low quality properties just to hit this number 30 by 30. I go, look at what you're buying. And then I said, look at what I've got. Because I came into the relationship with properties. I go, I might have less than you in terms of quantity, but look at the quality of what I've got, the return. Look at the numbers, not just the amount of properties, the number of properties. So I have particular beef with things like that, where it's like, get as many as you can. And, he had it in his head, like, I want to be like one of those young achievers in those magazines, he wanted to be written out. And I'm like, why do you want that? Is it an ego thing or are you actually setting up your future? Now that we've got kids, obviously he's humbled a bit and it's more about legacy and he's shifted his values because, life happens. But when I first met him, he was neck deep in this mentality, 0 to 130 properties in 10 years. That one's the book. I mean, I had a copy of the book. He had a copy of the book. Now I've got 2 of them in the house. And things like that. Like it's motivational and the intention of it is to motivate you. But I think sometimes some people can overshoot that. And then it makes people feel that what they're trying to do is unachievable or out of reach or not accessible to them, which is completely untrue. There's no need for 130 properties, right? There's no need. It's a lot of headaches. 100 of that. I don't want 100. I could probably do it if I wanted to. And like I said, my husband, if I put that goal in his head, he'll make it happen. But why? There's no need for it,
Yeah.
okay?
Sometimes it's much, or well, not sometimes, it's always easier to have really solid, good properties,
That's right.
15 or 13 or 10 of them, rather than having 30 or 40 of the low quality. Because remember, also with those low quality properties, you're getting low quality people as
Now,
well.
as
Not all
buyers
the time, but
as buyers agents, just to flip it to the marketing side, as buyers agents for us, there's more revenue for us if we tell you to go and buy 50 properties,
that's right.
right? So if we say to you, hey, you can go regional and pick up a $200,000 house because we know you're more likely to be able to afford 3 of them at $200,000, we collect 3 fees compared to going, you know what, that's garbage. Buy one $600,000 property. We only collect 1 fee, not 3. You've spent the same amount of money,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes these ones that peddle volume, it's about, if they're a buyer's agent, collecting their fee as well, because it's a transaction-based fee regardless of what you spend. And this is what I noticed was happening with Stephen. He would save up the smallest deposit he could to buy the bottom of the barrel stock just to keep transacting. Whereas I was taking a little bit longer between transactions, but buying better quality stock. He's going to hate that I've used here. But he's a really good example of how vulnerable that young ego-driven, he thought he was doing the right thing, right? He was ambitious and they tapped into that, you know? A good salesperson will find your pain point. And for him, you know, his ego was his part. I hacked at that as soon as we started. I was like, I'm cutting this ego into pieces. But you've got to really look at what you're doing, right? And the person that's giving you the advice, what is their interest in how you choose to act? So if they're pushing volume, quantity, is it because they get to collect a fee every time?
Yeah.
That's a big clue. So what you've got to look at there is, if we look at quantity here on this slide, property selection, are they actually critically selecting good stock for you to purchase, or are they just pushing volume? Same with property management. Is this the most efficient use of funds? Because again, you're managing property managers. As much as you're handing over the work to them, you've still got to oversee it. They're still your properties and you're still the one that's liable for them. So by spreading your eggs that far, you're also picking up more work and more commitment for yourself and more risk. As much as we say diversify, the opposite, or the risk of diversification, there's a word called diversification. You actually make your portfolio worse if you over diversify, because it's just, you're exposing yourself to too much. There's a fine line. There's like an economy of scale, right? There's a point at which it does become too big, right? Same with borrowing. Is this the most efficient use of leverage? Every transaction you make, you've got stamp duty. Like, there are costs with transactions, and I'm not saying I'll buy more expensive stuff so you don't pay it, because stamp duty is relative to purchase price, and I get that. You still got legals every time as well. But just be aware that if you're at the family barbecue, I've got 10 properties. That doesn't really mean anything compared to the bloke that's got 2 if his 2 are better than your 10. So just being mindful that you're not chasing the wrong goal, I guess, is what I'm trying to say here. Make sure you're actually thinking about what you're doing, which is why we've put together this presentation, okay? So the next slide here is about quality. Again, as I said earlier, this might not fit you exactly. This is a generic example. But let's just say, and again, very general numbers, so don't come at me with you messing, right? It's an example.
Like what? Okay.
I'm an English teacher. If my maths is wrong, no, my maths is right. I checked my maths. Let's just say, hypothetically, the average return on an investment property is 5%. Now with Dragan, you might do better or whatever, right? But let's just say the average across your portfolio is a 5% return on your investment. Now, if you don't know how to calculate yield and all of that, we'll put something somewhere. I don't know. I'm assuming you're coming in with some degree of knowledge. If you're not, watch all of the masterclasses, come back to this one.
Yeah.
But let's say your purchase returns 5% per year. So that's 5% of the purchase price. If it's $1 million property, you're making 50 grand a year in rental income. So 5% of the value of the property is coming back to you every year in income. Okay. Now let's just say, hypothetically, the average price of each of your properties, or average value, is $500,000. So your average gross income per year is $25,000 per property if you're buying $500,000 properties at a 5% return, okay? Give or take, we're talking averages. So how much money do you want to live off is what you need to ask yourself when you're deciding how many properties you want to buy. Now, by the time you retire, you got to think about what your needs are going to be. So for me now, I've got 3 kids, I've got school fees, we've got mortgage, we've got this, we've got whatever. Our expenses right now are at the highest they're ever going to be because our lives are at the most committed they're ever going to be. But once our kids are no longer dependent, once we no longer have private school fees, once we no longer have them eating us out of house and home, and it's just the 2 of us, we may downsize, we may not, I don't know. But when it's just the 2 of us in retirement, our needs aren't going to be as great, okay? So we might only need 100 grand or 200 grand gross per year to live off. So looking at what your life is costing you now may not be what it costs you in retirement for the same lifestyle, because you may not have those dependents or other commitments there. Your mortgage will be gone, right? So let's just say you want 100 grand a year gross. That means that those average properties, you only need 4 of them paid off. If you want 250 grand a year gross, which is a lot of money for 2 retirees, you only need 10 average investment properties. This 50, 60, 100, 200, like, it's ridiculous, overkill.
Yep.
Even if you look at it from an inheritance perspective, if you've got 2, 3, 4 kids, they get 1 or 2 properties each. That's a great leg up. They're going to be reaching retirement age themselves by the time that money gets to them. So they'll be fine. Don't worry about them. You don't need to overshoot it and overcommit yourself, or think you're signing up for a goal that's unachievable so you never get started anyway. It's like me with running the marathon. I have no interest in starting to train for that because I have no interest in running 42Ks, right? If you have no interest in owning 100 properties, well, what's the next step down? Is 10 properties okay? For me, that might be running a 5K. Yeah, 5K, I mean, still doesn't thrill me, but I'd probably have a crack at it, right? Same with you with getting to 5 or 10 properties. That might be the equivalent, and it's not a compromise. It's still a massive achievement, and it still gets you that retirement,
Yeah.
right? So try to apply what works for you and not get caught up in the overwhelm of that's unachievable, because it's really not. This stuff is really accessible to pretty much anyone. And if you look at the partner class to this one, we actually do a walkthrough of how to actually get from 0 to 5 properties.
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
recommend to watch.
Yeah, and you'll see how achievable it is for the average person. So these spruikers that throw the unachievable at you, let them. You don't need them. They're pushing you towards something that's just based on revenue for them.
Yep.
Okay?
And this is being conservative as well, guys. So, and this is
Yeah.
your typical buy hold strategies. There are other
Yeah.
strategies that you can actually get there faster, but we're doing the most conservative, slow pace strategy investment.
Yeah, that's it. Because we want to show you how achievable it is. Now, you could come to Dragan in your 15-minute call and go, look, Dragan, I'm already, 10 years out from retirement. I got to speed this up a bit. Dragan will go, yep, no worries. These are the ways you speed it up. Or you might go to Dragan and go, look, I'm 25. I'm still single. I don't know what my life holds. I might move overseas. I might get married. I might not. I might this. I might that. And Dragan will go, that's fine. You've got time. You've got uncertainty. So let's not overcommit you. Let's take this approach. Right? So the way you apply this to your circumstances obviously will differ in consultation with Dragan. But like you said, what we're showing you is a very achievable conservative strategy that most people would be able to do if they wanted to.
Yep.
So what I've done there is I've actually reversed it so we can look backwards to show that it's achievable. And then if we look at the other masterclass, that's when I look forward. So you can see both ways that it's viable, I suppose. So I've got Sydney there as the example. So if we look back 20 years in Sydney, the average or median, I can't remember if I did the median or the average actually, doesn't matter. The house price is about $518,000. Okay. Today it's 1,650. So what that shows us in 20 years, more or less, prices have trebled. Okay. So 518,000 then was average, 1,650 is average today. Now we're not buying average investment properties. Okay. We talked about 500K properties, which might not get you Sydney, it might get you somewhere else like Queensland. But for the sake of the maths, we're looking at a third of the median price in Sydney for an investment property, because investment properties, we might start more entry level for affordability. You may build up, but for now we're looking at entry level. So back then in 2005, a third of the median price, you would have been paying about $175,000 each for your investment property. It sounds cheap as chips now. It's only 20 years ago, right? But if you imagine a mortgage on $175,000 with what you're earning now compared to what you were earning then, suddenly the affordability crisis becomes less daunting, right? Because time helps. So let's say you purchase 10 properties at that average price. So maybe you were purchasing 10 years either side of 2005 to average out at that price. So 20 years worth of purchasing. Either side of that average gets you that average, more or less, again, generally speaking. Now, if those properties are worth $500,000 each today, some 20 years later, and you decided that you want 10 properties to live off because, you want a whole bunch of money, whatever it was for 10, how many extra properties or how many spare properties would you have needed to buy to eliminate all those loans in today's dollars? So one $500,000 property, when you sell it, knocks out 3. So it knocks out itself plus 2 more. So for every one that you sell, you've paid down 2 that you keep. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sense, yeah.
So if you've got 10 and you've decided that you need 6 to live off, right? You sell the superfluous 4 and you got those plus a bit of change.
That's right.
Okay. So what you need to do is over purchase. You buy too many, let them appreciate in value over time. And then the equity actually pays down not just the mortgage on the one you're selling, but on 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, however many more, depending on how many property cycles you've waited. Okay. So the idea is, yes, you buy hard early, but if you know your end goal, if you know how many you want to end up on, then you sell down strategically at the other end. Now, you don't have to think, oh, what is the value of $1 going to be in 20 years' time? How do I know that? You look at it in today's dollars because it's all relative in 20 years' time anyway. Because you're going, well, 5 average properties today and 5 average properties in 20 years' time is going to be relative to the average because everything rises up with the average, right? So you don't have to forecast the economy. You just have to forecast what income do I need and how many properties at 5% will get me that. That's it.
Right.
Once you've got that number in your head, you go, okay, I'll buy that many plus 2, 3, 4 more. Done. Stop buying. Then you focus on pay down, consolidation. Okay, find me another buyer's agent that's going to say to you, stop buying. It's not in their interest to say that, right? But for us, it's about giving responsible advice and not overcommitting you, because if we overcommit you, then you're exposed to risk. Okay, and we're not in that business. We don't want to do that.
That's right. And guys, again, QR code here. So book yourself in for a free 15-minute discovery call with myself. Have your questions ready, no matter how silly you think they are. Please ask. QR code, scan the code, book it in, or go to propertysessions.com.au/15, and I will talk to you there. Thank you very much, Amanda, and we'll be seeing you in the next masterclass.
Yeah, definitely catch that 0 to 5 one if you can as well.
Yep.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.